How do you make a woman feel genuinely deeply connected to you? Not through what you do, not through what you have, but through 3 specific words. And more importantly, how do you do it without feeling like you are performing or reciting a script someone handed you? I know, that's the question nobody teaches you to answer. You were never shown this. Not in school, not by your father, not by anyone who actually studied how emotional connection forms between men and women at the neurological level. And the problem isn't that you lack the words. The problem is that nobody ever explained what words actually do inside the mind of a woman who is drawn to you, and why these 3 specific ones cut through everything else like nothing else can. Today, that changes. Hello, and welcome back. I have spent years in research studying the psychology of emotional connection, the neuroscience of language and attraction, and specifically how the words men use, or fail to use, determine whether a woman feels genuinely seen by them or quietly, invisibly disconnected. And what I keep returning to across every study, every framework, every clinical conversation I have ever been part of is this. Most men are not emotionally inarticulate. They are emotionally untranslated. They feel deeply. They simply were never given the vocabulary that allows a woman to feel that depth alongside them. That gap, that translation gap, is what these 3 words close. These are not flattery. They are not techniques. They are precise deployments of language that, when used correctly and authentically, activate specific neurological and psychological responses in women that create an almost involuntary bond. Let me show you exactly what they are and, more importantly, why they work. Before we get to the 3 words themselves, I need to give you the science, because once you understand what is happening inside her mind and body when these words land, you will never use language carelessly again. Research in psycholinguistics, the study of how language affects the brain, has established that words are not neutral conveyances of information. They are neurological events. The right word at the right moment does not just communicate a thought. It can trigger measurable physiological responses. A landmark study by Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, published in the journal Psychological Science in 2007, used functional MRI brain imaging to study what happens when people put precise language to emotional experiences. The study found that attaching an accurate emotional label to what is being felt or observed reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat and stress center, while increasing activity in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the region associated with emotional regulation and clarity. In plain language, precise emotional language creates a measurable shift toward calm and clarity in the brain. While this research examined the person doing the labeling, the broader principle it reveals is deeply relevant to human connection. When someone in your presence uses language that names your inner experience accurately, that puts words to something you have been feeling but haven't articulated, it creates a powerful sense of being genuinely understood. And that sense of being understood registers not merely as a feeling, but as a reduction in threat and an increase in safety at a neurological level. This is not poetry. This is science. And it explains why certain men, not necessarily the most attractive, the wealthiest, or the most conventionally impressive, leave an imprint on women that others, despite every surface advantage, simply cannot match. They have learned, consciously or not, to use language that lands at a neurological level. The 3 words I am going to walk you through all operate on this principle. They are not grand declarations. They are precise. And precision in emotional language is everything. I want to be clear about something before we begin. When I say words, I do not mean single isolated terms that you drop into conversation like psychological tricks. I mean specific 2 to 4 word phrases, each one a complete emotional gesture, each one a distinct learnable communication move. These are the 3. Word 1, I notice you. Not you look beautiful, not you seem happy today. Not a compliment about her appearance or even her mood. I notice you. Those 3 words are among the most psychologically powerful combinations a man can speak to a woman. because they do something that almost no other phrase does. They communicate specific, undivided attention to who she is beneath the surface. Here is why this works at the psychological level. Dr. John Gottman, Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of Washington and one of the most cited researchers in relationship science, spent decades studying what separates couples who stay deeply connected from those who drift apart. Through thousands of hours of observational research at what became known as the Love Lab, he identified what he called bids for connection, the small, often quiet attempts people make to be noticed and acknowledged by the person they care about. His research followed newlywed couples over 6 years. The couples who remained together had turned toward each other's bids 86% of the time. The couples who divorced had turned toward those bids only 33% of the time. Responding to bids, showing the other person that you see them, was one of the strongest predictors of relationship longevity his research identified. Women, particularly at the stage of life where she has been through enough to stop performing for people who aren't paying close attention, are acutely sensitive to whether a man is truly present with her or just physically near her. The difference is felt instantly, often without conscious analysis. I notice you is a bid response. It is the linguistic equivalent of turning fully toward her. And specifically, it works like this in practice. Not, I notice you, as a standalone statement to a stranger, but deployed in context with genuine observation behind it. I notice you get quiet when a room gets loud, like you're thinking something nobody else is thinking. I notice you always make sure other people are comfortable before you worry about yourself. I notice the way you light up when you talk about that. What these sentences accomplish is specific. They tell her, I have been watching you, not your surface, not your performance. I have been watching who you actually are. And for a woman who has spent years being appreciated for what she offers rather than who she is, that distinction is seismic. Research on partner attractiveness consistently identifies warmth, attentiveness, and the capacity to make someone feel genuinely cared for as among the most highly valued qualities in a long-term partner, across cultures and age groups. I notice you delivers all 3 in 4 syllables. This is the witnessing word, and its power increases every time it is backed by genuine observation. It cannot be faked. It can only be earned by the man who actually pays attention. Word 2, tell me more. This is perhaps the most underestimated phrase in the emotional vocabulary of intimacy. 3 words. No embellishment, no follow-up question, no redirect to your own experience. Tell me more. The science behind why this phrase is so disproportionately powerful begins with research on deep listening, and specifically, the measurable effects of being genuinely listened to. Dr. Guy Itzchakov at the University of Haifa has produced one of the most rigorous and consistent bodies of research on the psychology of listening. Across multiple published studies, including work published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin and the Annual Review of Organizational Psychology and Organizational Behavior, his research demonstrates that people who feel deeply listened to experience measurably reduced anxiety, increased self-clarity, and report feeling significantly closer and more attached to the person listening to them. These effects hold across repeated experiments and methodologies, and a critical finding across his work is this: the listener does not have to say anything profound. They simply have to signal, authentically, that they want more of what the speaker is sharing. Tell me more is that signal, deployed with elegance and precision. Here is what it does not do, and why its simplicity is intentional. It does not impose a new direction on the conversation. It does not demonstrate your knowledge on the subject she just raised. It does not redirect toward a solution, a comparison, or your own relevant anecdote. It stays entirely inside her experience and asks only for more of it. Most men, when a woman shares something meaningful, respond in one of 3 ways. They offer advice, they relate it to their own experience, or they move the conversation forward. All 3 responses, however well-intentioned, signal to the woman, neurologically, that the conversation is no longer about her. Her nervous system registers this as a subtle withdrawal of attention, even when the man is genuinely trying to connect. Tell me more does the opposite. It stays. It says, what you just shared is not the beginning of my response. It is the thing I want to go deeper into. You are the subject. Keep going. For women who rarely encounter a man willing to remain fully inside her world without rushing to offer, fix, or redirect, this phrase is profoundly disarming. According to Ichakov's research, being listened to in this way increases the speaker's sense of being valued and strengthens their attachment to the listener. Effects that persist well beyond the conversation itself. Women remember how men made them feel far more reliably than they remember what those men said. A man who consistently signals, "Tell me more," becomes a man she associates with the feeling of being valued. That association deepens with every repetition. She will find herself thinking about him in the quiet spaces of her day, not because he was impressive, but because he was the only person who made her feel that her inner world was worth staying in. This is the depth invitation. Use it at the moment she shares something, particularly when she shares something she didn't have to. That is when it carries the most weight. Word 3, I was wrong. I want to address the resistance immediately because some men reading this will feel it. That's not a phrase of attraction. That's a phrase of defeat. It is not. And the research is unambiguous on this. Dr. John Gottman's decades of relationship research identified what he called the 4 horsemen, the 4 communication patterns most predictive of relationship breakdown and eventual dissolution. One of the most destructive of the 4 is defensiveness, the refusal to accept responsibility, the habit of deflecting accountability back onto the other person rather than acknowledging your own role. Gottman's research is specific about what defensiveness communicates. It tells the other person that your ego matters more to you than the truth between you. And it tells her nervous system that she is not safe to be honest with you. The antidote Gottman's research prescribes is equally specific, accepting responsibility for your role in a situation, clearly without elaborate justification, without wrapping an apology inside an explanation. The willingness to say simply, "You're right, I could have handled that better," or when the situation calls for it, "I was wrong," does something that almost nothing else can. The social psychology research on apology and trust is consistent and well established. A peer-reviewed study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that participants who received a genuine acknowledgement of fault from their partner were significantly more likely to trust them in future interactions, and that this effect was mediated specifically by increased perceptions of the other person's trustworthiness. In other words, admitting you were wrong does not diminish how someone sees you. It elevates it. It signals that you are more committed to what is true between you than to the protection of your own image. That quality, the capacity to be wrong without collapsing, is genuinely rare. And for women who have been in relationships where accountability was scarce and ego was defended at the cost of everything, encountering a man who can simply say, "I was wrong," is not a small moment. It is a revelation. I want to be direct about something here. Many men in the 35 to 60 bracket were raised in environments that equated admitting fault with loss of status. Homes where a man who said, "he was wrong," was seen as weak, emasculated, diminished. If that is your background, I am not asking you to override it in a single conversation. I'm asking you to understand that the framework you inherited was wrong, and that the men who cannot say those 3 words are not protecting their dignity. They are protecting themselves from exactly the kind of connection that makes a relationship extraordinary. This is the security signal, and its impact on women is not subtle. It does not just make her feel heard in the moment. It makes her feel that this man is someone she can trust with her real self, because he has already shown her he can handle being wrong about his own. I want to pause here and say something directly. If these 3 phrases feel unfamiliar, if "I notice you" feels vulnerable, if "tell me more" feels like insufficient contribution, if "I was wrong" feels dangerous, the discomfort is not a character flaw. It is the entirely predictable result of how most men in your generation were educated to communicate. You were taught that language is a vehicle for information. That emotion is a private matter. That demonstrating competence is how you earn respect, and demonstrating uncertainty is how you lose it. You were never shown that emotional precision, the ability to name, to hold space, to acknowledge, is its own form of strength, a form that women respond to at a level that transcends everything else. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you this. And today, that changes. Here's what the research on attachment and emotional bonding tells us about the cumulative effect of these three phrases. Each of them, individually, activates a specific neurological and psychological response. Together, deployed authentically over the course of a genuine relationship, or even a single significant conversation, they create what attachment researchers call a felt sense of secure base. The deep, often wordless conviction that this person is safe, that they see you clearly, and that they will not abandon the truth of who you are when it becomes inconvenient. John Bowlby's foundational attachment research, extended by Dr. Mary Ainsworth and subsequently applied to adult romantic relationships by Hazan and Shaver, established that the same motivational system governing infant caregiver attachment also underlies adult romantic bonds. The behaviors that create secure attachment in adult relationships are not grand gestures. They are precisely this: consistent attention, deep curiosity, and honest accountability. I notice you. Tell me more. I was wrong. These three phrases are the linguistic expression of secure attachment. They are, in the most literal psychological sense, the words of emotional intelligence in action. And here is what the compounding effect looks like in practice. A woman who receives all three from the same man over time does not just feel attracted to him. She feels anchored to him. She thinks about him when she doesn't need to. She returns to conversations with him in her mind not because they were dramatic, but because they were the first conversations in which she felt completely real. That is not infatuation. That is the formation of a bond that is genuinely difficult to walk away from. This is the question I hear most often from men who understand the theory and want to apply it authentically. The answer is simpler than you might expect. These phrases work only when they are backed by genuine attention. I notice you is hollow without actual observation behind it. Tell me more collapses if you check your phone 30 seconds after saying it. I was wrong is felt as manipulation if it is deployed strategically rather than accountably. The work, then, is not linguistic. It is attentional. It is the practice of being fully present, of arriving in a conversation with your entire self, without an agenda to impress, without monitoring how you are being received, without rehearsing your next statement while she is still finishing her thought. That presence, that quality of undivided, unhurried attention, is what makes these three phrases land with the force they are capable of. Without it, they are words. With it, they become an experience of another person that she will carry with her long after the conversation ends. And the good news, the genuinely good news for men at your stage of life, is that the capacity for this kind of presence is not something you have to manufacture. It is something you have already developed, often without knowing it. The men who have been through enough to stop performing, who have learned to listen because they've discovered that silence often carries more information than speech, who no longer need to dominate a conversation to feel secure in it. That man, the one you have quietly become, is already most of the way there. These three words are simply the translation. How many conversations in your past would have gone differently with these three phrases in your vocabulary? How many women who mattered, who were paying attention, who were quietly hoping you would stay fully present, walked away not because you failed to be impressive, but because you didn't yet have the words to show them what you actually felt? Let that settle. Not with regret, with awakening, because from this point forward you see it differently. And when the language changes, everything around it changes with it. I'll see you in the next one.